Hello, I'm Dr. Craig Childress. I'm a clinical psychologist in Pasadena, California. I specialize in working with children and families around issues of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, angry, oppositional, defiant children, parent-child relationship problems, marital problems, things like that. In this video series, I've been discussing a particular type of relationship problem that I refer to as a parental alienation dynamic. And in this set of video segments, I'm going to be discussing the origins of the parental alienation dynamic in a process that's called the transgenerational transmission of trauma, which is a conceptualization that's drawn from early childhood mental health, having to do with the transfer of relationship patterns across generations. But before I begin to describe the transgenerational transmission of trauma relative to the alienation dynamic, I needed to establish a set of nomenclature for the various participants. That's because I'm going to be discussing the transfer of relationship patterns across three different generations, starting with the alienating parent as a child and their relationship with their own parent, and then how those relationship patterns that are established during that early childhood relationship are going to find expression in the current relationship patterns that the alienating parent has with their spouse, the targeted parent, and with their own child. And as I begin to describe the transfer of these relationship patterns across three generations, it's going to become very cumbersome to talk about, the parent of the alienating parent versus the child of the alienating child, and it's going to become very confusing. So what I've done is created three different levels to this process. The alpha level is where the trauma initially enters the family system and involves the parent of the alienating parent. Now, the trauma likely actually entered maybe a generation, two, maybe even three generations prior to this, but I'm cutting it off at the parent of the alienating parent because that's all the further we need to go back to understand what the process dynamics are. And so the alpha level involves the relationship the alienating parent has with their own parent. So that parent is the alpha parent. It is the parent of the alienating parent. The second level is the transmission of that early childhood trauma to the current relationships. And that occurs through the alienating parent. And so that's the beta level, is the alienating parent as a child who is in relationship with the alpha parent and is a recipient of that early childhood trauma. And then they grow up to be an adult, the beta adult or the beta parent, beta spouse, who is the alienating parent in the current situation. So we have the alpha level of the parent of the alienating parent, the beta level, which is the alienating parent themselves as a child and then as an adult, and then the delta level, which is the reenactment or expression of that early childhood trauma. And that involves the delta child, who is the current child who is expressing the alienation process, and the delta parent, who is the targeted parent, who is playing their role within the reenactment of this early childhood trauma. So there's three levels: the alpha level, the parent of the alienating parent; the beta level, that is the alienating parent themselves as a child and adult; and then the delta level, which is the expression of the process into the current child and the targeted parent. Now, another advantage, I think, that occurs with the use of this more neutral terminology of alpha parent, beta parent, and delta parent, delta child kind of nomenclature, is that it has a less pejorative quality than calling the alienating parent alienating. There's a negativity or a negative connotation to referring to the current beta parent or alienating parent as being that, the alienating parent. While I don't agree. I think what the alienating parent is doing is extremely harmful to the child. I would consider it a form of child abuse. I'm very disturbed by the process. At the same time, understanding the origins of the alienation dynamic, I understand that the beta parent or the alienating parent was themselves a victim of child abuse. The alienating parent, the beta parent, is an abused child who's grown up and is expressing the abuse that they experienced during their early childhood experience in their current relationship patterns. So while I am appalled at what's going on in the situation, At the same time, I also recognize that there are multiple victims as part of this process, and that the trauma, the abuse, is actually originating in the alpha parent and is coming through everybody and is victimizing everybody as part of this process. And in truth, the alpha parent was themselves probably abused, so it continues to go back in multiple generations. And so by using a more neutral terminology, I hope to step aside from the pejorative of somebody's bad or evil and hopefully open up the domain that we can begin to actually consider how to go about treating the beta parent, how to go about treating the alienating parent to help heal the trauma that they've experienced through their own child abuse history.